אני אדבר בעברית ואורן ידבר באנגלית. I'm introducing you in Hebrew and then Oren introduce you in English and אני אגיד שזה מאוד מרגש בשבילי כי טרנס ריל מבחינתי כשאני יצאתי לדרך בשנת 96 או 97 חיפשתי וחיפשנו איזושהי תורה, איזושהי דרך איך לגשת לגברים ואז היה איזה מדבר ככה, לא הרבה כתבו אז בשנות ה-90 ואני זוכר שהגיע אליי הספר של טרנס ריל בהוצאת המובד שיצא ב-97 ואני קורא את סיפור החיים שלו ואני קורא איך הוא עובד עם גברים ואני רואה איך הוא נחשף והוא מטלטל אותי על האפשרות שלי. זה לא הספר הפסיכולוגי הקלאסי שגבר מתאר מטופלים, הוא מתאר על יחסים שלו עם אבא שביר, עם אבא עם התפרצויות זעם, והחוויה הזאת של לקרוא את הספר, אני לא רוצה לדבר על זה, הייתה משנת חיים מבחינתי, והרבה מהעמדה הטיפולית שלי היא הרבה בזכות האיש. אז מבחינתי זה רגע מאוד מאוד מרגש שהוא הסכים לקחת איתנו חלק בכנס הזה, ואורן בוא תעשה את זה באנגלית.
Hi Terry, you hear us? Okay, Terry Real is an internationally recognized family therapist, speaker and author. Terry founded the Relational Life Institute. He is a family therapist and teacher for more than 25 years. Terry is the best-selling author of I Don't Want to Talk About It, Overcoming the Secret Legacy of Male Depression, and also The Straight Talking, How Can I Get Through to You, Reconnecting Men and Women, and most recently, The New Rules of Marriage, What You Need to Make Love Work. And in a more personal way, for us, Terry is our most important teacher for understanding man's inner life. We are very excited that Terry is here with us today. We had the dream of having him in this conference for years and realized that an online conference is a good opportunity to invite him to come. Thank you for accepting the invitation. You have to unmute.
Okay, thank you for inviting me, and thank all of you for your interest, those of you who are attending. I was in Israel just before this plague. I was in Jerusalem teaching for a couple of days, and I hope to come back next year when all this is over. So it's a great... Let's talk about men. The title of this talk is Each Man is a Bridge. And the great American John Bradshaw used to have a saying, pass it back or pass it on. Pass it back or pass it on. So, of course, you've already thought of this, but take a moment and ask yourself, what were the messages about masculinity? Are we okay? You can hear me okay? Okay. Ask yourself, what were the messages that you got in your childhood growing up about what it means to be a man? And as I've written in many places, I believe that currently, and it would be interesting to speak with you in Israel, a country that is in and out of perennial conflict. What were the messages that you got about being a man? Now, in the United States, if you ask girls what messages they have about what it means to be a good woman, they've changed. 50 years of feminism has changed what girls say. Girls now say, which they wouldn't have said decades ago, that they're capable of anything. They could be president, they could be an astronaut, they could be a diplomat. That over-accommodating, soft, let's not make too many waves that plagued girls, the loss of voice in girls and women has substantially changed. If you ask young boys in America what it takes to make a good man, they will tell you the same exact thing that they would have said 50 years ago. Strong, independent, stoic, no feelings, no vulnerability. So let's talk about the dilemma that we're all in. The traditional code of masculinity, which I just said: strong, no feelings, independent, no dependency, no vulnerability. That code imposed upon you as a child, whether you wanted it or not, asks us to give up half of our human nature: the emotional, the vulnerable, the dependent. The essence of traditional masculinity is invulnerability. The more invulnerable you are, the more manly you are, and God forbid, the more vulnerable you are, the more girly you are, or there are a few other homophobic phrases that people get thrown at. That's how it works. And if a girl in this day and age crosses into boyland, if she's a quote unquote tomboy, people will understand. But to this day, if a boy crosses over into girl land, the punishment is swift and often violent. Erik Erikson, the great psychologist, used to say that it was the mark of a functional culture that the roles that our children were groomed for are the same roles that they'll have as adults, that it's consistent. But what I tell the men in my office who are dragged in every day, usually by women, most men are what I call wife-mandated referrals. What I tell the men who are dragged into my office every day is, you're a statistic, Harry. There are hundreds and thousands of you being dragged into the therapist's office just like mine, so that somebody like me can render you a different person. That's what women want. They want us to be different. One of the great stories of the 20th century has been women's changing roles. One of the great stories of the 21st century may well be how men react to women's changing roles. And there's a lot of force of conservatism. There's a lot of force saying, man, if women would just shut up and go back to the 50s and we would be okay. Here's a little secret as a couples therapist of 40 years. Men, at least in my country, men by and large are not that unhappy in their marriages. They're unhappy that the women are so unhappy with them. I deal with guys, and you can bring them to me by video. I deal with couples on the brink of divorce. That's my specialty. Couples that no one else has been able to help. Most of these couples have seen 3, 4, 5, so far the record's 8 therapists. Nobody's been able to help them. And even when I see these people who are at marital death's door, and I ask the woman to leave, and I talk to the guy alone, the guy says something like this: hey, between us, it's not that bad around here. If you could just kind of get her, off my back, I think things would be okay. Wrong. So rather than, what's happened is that women, newly empowered, culturally empowered, financially empowered, are asking for more from their marriages, and specifically more emotional connection and more emotional intimacy than we raise boys and men traditionally to deliver. Harry comes into my office, he thinks, oh man, therapy, this is a chick thing. And 9 out of 10 therapists say, Harry, don't worry about it. We're gender neutral, man. I believe in men as well as women. It's like, cool. This is not a feminine endeavor. Now sit down, relax, open your heart, share your feelings, be vulnerable, and articulate your wants. And come on, that's all feminine. Under the traditional rubric of patriarchy, all of that stuff is chick stuff. But under the binary of patriarchy, these things are feminine, these things are masculine. Intimacy itself is coded as a chick thing. Intimacy itself is deemed as feminine. And we do to intimate relationships what we do to many things we deem feminine. We idealize it in principle and devalue it in fact. We men have not been taught essential relationship skills. Younger men are better than older men. Baby boomers my age are the worst. There's an enormous divorce rate amongst baby boomers in America. We talk about the great divorce revolution because so many women are fed up with taking care of their men. Now look, I don't want women to stand down from their new demands of deep emotional intimacy from men. I want us guys to stand up and deliver the goods. Open your hearts. Learn about your emotions. So many of the men I treat don't even know what the hell an emotion is. They're like cameras. The satellite dish is tuned out. And I have to teach them to turn that dish painfully in. Keep a journal. Ask yourself about feelings. For those of you who have a piece of paper and a pen right now, grab it. There are a few primary feelings. Here they are. Ready? Write this down in a column. Joy, pain, anger, fear, shame, guilt, love. Joy, pain, anger, fear, shame, guilt, love. When I am working, these are primary feelings, just like primary colors. There are millions of views of feelings, but this is one list. You can make up your own of the basics. I hand this list to a guy. I say, tell me what you're feeling as you're sitting in that couch right now. I don't know. I guess I'm feeling a little nervous. Great. What's that in your body? And if you have a feeling located in the physical sensation of your body, ground it. It's in my chest. What's it feel like? Butterfly. If those butterflies in your chest could speak, what would they be saying? I'm afraid I'm going to do this wrong. Great, that's fear. What else are you feeling? And I got to tell you, I deal with men who say they don't know their feelings, they don't have feelings for 40 years. I hand them this concrete list. I say, tell me your feelings, boom. You have left your feelings, those of us who are numb or self-medicating or outwardly focused. You've left your feelings, they never left you. They've been percolating along all over the place. But in order to have feelings, you have to feel like you have the right to have feelings. You have to have the right to be vulnerable. You have to have the right to be human. And the great lie of masculinity is that humanity is weak. Vulnerability is despicable. Emotions are for children. Strong. So I'll tell you a story. I like to tell stories. I'm moved to tell you this story today. I had the privilege of being in Tanzania with a friend who was a safari leader for many years. And we went to a Maasai village, way off. Took us 8 hours of hard driving to get there. And I had a men's group at night for the elders of the village. We asked all sorts, God and women and death and all sorts of questions. But I asked them about men. I said, what makes a good Marani, a good warrior? And I mean, these were the real, we're talking swords, shields, earlobes down to here, kill lions. These are warriors. And I said, what makes a good warrior? In America, there's a debate. Some people think that a good Marani, a good warrior, a good man, is tough and fierce. And some people think he's tender and responsive and sensitive. What do you guys think? What makes a good Marani? It's a true story. And this little guy, about 4'3", stands up, clicks his finger, and it goes from Maasai to Swahili to English to Swahili to Maasai and back in. And here's what he says to me. And if you get nothing from this, get this today. From this old Maasai guy. He says, I have no interest in talking to you about what makes a good Marani. I'm only interested in talking to you about what makes a great Marani. So now look, when the moment calls for fierceness, a good Marani is a killer, no question, don't even bother. When the moment calls for tenderness, a good Marani lays down his sword and shield and is sweet like a baby. A great Marani, this little guy tells me, is the one who knows which moment is which. The word is adaptive. The word is relational. Being in touch with what's in front of your face and responding to it with an open heart and with some generosity and decency. This is what it means to be a man. And I don't want to talk about it. My first book about men and male depression and what the society does to boys, which produces that depression. I talked about the difference between being a boy and a man. A boy's question, and a boy can last into his 50s, a boy's question is, what do you got? What does the world have for me? Where's my gratification? A man's question is, what do you need? What does this moment right here require of me? And I talk to men all day long about moving from being in a boy position to a man position, moving from asking, what is this good for me for, to how do I need to show up in this circumstance? I talk to men about becoming true family men, learning to put your ego aside and be flexible and relational and generous. I refurbish some of the traditions of masculinity, and I pull them out of context and repurpose them. I say to guys over and over again, I want you to ask yourself at any given moment, this is your plumb line, okay? This is your measurement. This is what you're measuring up to. I want you to ask yourself at any given moment, what would a generous gentleman do right now? And particularly an emotional, generous gentleman. Your partner wakes you up, we'll say you're gay, your partner wakes you up and he's worried about one of the little kids, one of your kids together. And it's 11:30 at night. So your first consciousness, I call it, your whoosh is, oh, come on, man, leave me alone. We'll talk about it in the morning. But you ask yourself, in this moment right now, what would a generous gentleman give to my partner right now? You take a breath, you dig down a little deeper, you can find some patience, you find some compassion, and you say, okay, let's talk for 10 minutes, what's on your mind? The relational answer to the question, who's right and who's wrong, is who cares? It doesn't matter. But you can only get at that if you're a whole human being. Moving men and women into relationality and out of patriarchy means moving them into being half of who they are to whole. I want our daughters and I want the women in our lives to be smart and aggressive and sexy and all sorts of things. And I want our boys and men to be what I call strong, big-hearted guys. Opening up your heart is not unmanly. Opening up your heart moves you beyond the traditions that you were raised with. Because the way in our culture under patriarchy that we quote unquote turn boys into men is through disconnection. The wound for girls and women is disempowerment traditionally. Feminism is changing that. Men have not changed as much. The wound for girls and women is disempowerment, and the healing move is to re-empower them. The move for boys and men, the wound is not disempowerment. Often men are falsely empowered. They're overly empowered. They're entitled. But the wound is disconnection. The way we turn boys into men in our culture is by cutting them off from their feelings, from their wants and needs, from their vulnerabilities, from their wishes. from their dependency, from so many things that are human. I want whole men, big, strong, big-hearted, open, responsive, sensitive, emotional, powerful men. It isn't either or. You can be strong. I talk about soft power. You can be strong and you can be gentle in your strength at the same time. This is new. Under patriarchy, you can either be connected or you can be powerful, but you can't be both at the same time, because power is seen as power over, not power with. It's domination. In the world of men, you're either one up or one down, grandiose or shame-filled, superior or inferior, above or below. There's very little platform for same as. That's healthy self-esteem. I'm neither better you than nor less than you. I'm neither superior nor inferior. All of us have the same worth as human beings. We're born with it. That's healthy self-esteem. Men don't have it. We bounce back and forth between feelings of inferiority and then often defensively into grandiosity. Our partner ignores us or behaves in some unloving way. We move deep into shame, defectiveness, inadequacy, helplessness. Most of us guys have about 2 seconds worth of tolerance for that. We go from one down to one up, from shame to grandiosity, from inferiority to righteous indignation and attack. That is the dynamic of male violence, both verbal and aggressive. Abandonment, shame, grandiosity, rage, attack. The shift from shame to grandiosity is one of the essential characteristics of traditional masculinity. Righting the wrong through retaliation, righting the wrong through violence. We must be a new kind of man. And that does not mean that we don't defend ourselves. It does not mean that we are not strong. We are strong. But we're also strong within a relational context. There's a difference between being strong and being dominating. I've written in several venues that masculinity, at least in my country and throughout much of the West, is currently at war with itself. Like I asked that old Maasai guy. There are two versions of masculinity currently at large in the world. One is very progressive, collaborative, relational, ecological. I say that thinking relationally is like thinking ecologically. And thinking patriarchally is thinking in a way that puts you above the system. It is hubris. It is deluded pride. Many of you may know the Hebrew or the Aramaic better than I ever will, but in the King James Version of the Old Testament, as you all know, God gives Adam dominion over all the things that creep and crawl and fly. Forget it. I hope it's a mistranslation. Whether it is or it isn't, what it certainly is a bad idea. We are not above nature. That is the essential delusion of the patriarchal masculinity. We are not in control. We are not above nature controlling it. We are a subcomponent part of nature inside it. And we move inside nature with the humility of understanding that we're a part of it, we're not masters of it. Whether the nature that you're trying to control is the planet, or whether the nature you're trying to control is your wife or your kids or your own body. We are not above and controlling. We are in and dependent, interdependent on one another, on our communities, on our planet, on spirit. Get it straight. We do not have to be in charge of the universe. And it is not our right to be in charge. of the universe. So we shift from a Newtonian dominant patriarchal model to an ecological, relational, collaborative model. And we live a lot longer when we make that shift. From a collaborative ecological model, it doesn't matter who's right or who's wrong. The truth is not as important. I have a saying, you can be right or you can be married. What's more important to you? From the relational perspective, the question is not who's right and who's wrong, but how are we going to work this out in a way that's going to work for both of us so we don't drive each other crazy? How are we going to get along? How are we going to manage this in a way that doesn't crush you, such that you retaliate against me? And I'm thinking about that in the narrowest sense of your bedroom and your living room, and I'm thinking about it in terms of culture and societies. I'm thinking about how we exist in the context that we're in, how we behave for our sake. And what I ask of all of you is to take this pledge, and you can defend yourself and still honor this pledge, which is short of self-defense, nothing is going to come out of my mouth that is disrespectful to another human being. If it falls below the level of respect, I take a breath, I find a different way of saying it. And similarly, I don't sit in receiving disrespect from somebody and do nothing about it. I may not be able to stop them, but if I try and it doesn't work, I can always leave. I call this full respect living. You don't dish it out, you don't take it. You live a contempt-free life. You're not contemptuous of others. You don't accept their contempt toward you. I also call this a nonviolent life because I believe that emotional contempt is emotional violence, that all emotional violence starts with contempt. One up, grandiose, better than. So I don't know if you all are capable of bringing peace to the state, to the context that you're in, but we are capable of bringing peace to our families. We are capable of ending war with our partners and our kids. And we're capable of saying that we will be good, that we will not violate, that we will not drop below the level of respectful behavior. It's the difference between saying, I'm not talking to you badly, don't talk that way to me, which is a C, or saying, honey, I want to hear what you have to say. Could you tone your voice down so I can really listen to it? Two ways of saying the same thing, but one's disrespectful and one is respectful. You can stand up for yourself and cherish the relationship in the same breath, but you have to learn a new way of being in the world in order to do that. Learn it. Support one another. Be the change we wish for. Be the kind of man that you want to be. I always ask men the same question. What kind of father did you have? What kind of father do you want to be? Will you let me help you sort through the legacy that was handed to you? Keep the good and pass it on. Hold back the bad and let it die with you. Each man is a bridge. You are accountable for taking the messages you got and digesting them and transforming them into the messages you give. Our children are watching. The future is squarely in our hands. I say to men across the board, the greatest gift you can give your children is your own growth, health, and recovery. Let's help each other get there. Thank you for listening to me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Terry.
You're welcome.
Waiting to see you here.
Thank you.